The revelation. The kitchen of Rhodes and Rose's restaurant fell silent as Damien Rhodes stared at his phone screen, his hands trembling. The text message from an unknown number contained 3 photographs that shattered his world into irreparable fragments. His wife Natasha, wrapped in the arms of another man in what was unmistakably a hotel suite. The timestamp showed yesterday afternoon, the same time she'd claimed to be at a spa appointment. Damien's sous chef called his name twice before he registered the sound. He mumbled something about feeling ill, stripped off his apron, and walked out into the cool evening air of the city. His feet carried him without direction, past glowing storefronts and laughing couples, until he found himself pushing through the heavy oak doors of the Velvet Room, an upscale wine bar he'd never visited before. He ordered a bourbon, neat. Then another. The amber liquid burned, but it couldn't touch the ice spreading through his chest. 12 years of marriage, 12 years of building a life together, and she destroyed it all for Victor Castellano, a real estate mogul whose face plastered billboards across the city. You look like a man who's discovered the worst kind of truth. The voice was silk and shadow, wrapping around him like smoke. Damien turned to find a woman sliding onto the bar stool beside him. She was stunning in an unconventional way, raven hair cascading over bare shoulders, grey eyes that seemed to pierce through pretense, and a burgundy dress that suggested confidence and danger in equal measure. "Excuse me," Damien managed, his voice hoarse. She smiled, but it didn't reach those penetrating eyes. "I'm Camilla Devereaux, and unless I'm very much mistaken, you're Damien Rhodes. I've been to your restaurant, exquisite food, by the way." She paused, studying his face with unsettling intensity. "I also know your wife. More specifically, I know who she's been sleeping with." Damien's stomach dropped. "How?" "Because he's my husband," Camilla whispered, leaning closer until her perfume, something dark and floral, filled his senses. "Victor Castellano. Your wife slept with my husband." Her lips curved into something between a smile and a snarl. "Join me for a romantic revenge plot." The proposition hung in the air between them, dangerous and intoxicating. Damien should have walked away. Should have gone home, confronted Natasha, handled this like a rational adult. Instead, he found himself asking, "What did you have in mind?" Camilla's smile widened, genuine this time, tinged with something wild. "Meet me tomorrow evening. My studio. I'll text you the address. Come alone, and come ready to make them regret everything." She placed a business card on the bar, elegant script announcing her as a bespoke jewelry designer, and disappeared into the crowd as mysteriously as she'd arrived. Damien sat alone, staring at the card, feeling the first stirrings of something he couldn't quite name. It wasn't just anger or hurt. It was possibility. Dark, thrilling possibility. He pocketed the card and ordered another drink. The conspiracy begins. Camilla's studio occupied the top floor of a converted warehouse in the Arts District, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city. Damien arrived precisely at 8, his heart hammering against his ribs. He'd spent the entire day in a fog, going through the motions at the restaurant while his mind spun with possibilities and doubts. Camilla opened the door wearing black silk pants and a cream blouse, her hair pulled back to reveal the elegant column of her neck. "You came," she said, something like relief flickering across her features. "I wasn't entirely sure you would." "I wasn't either," Damien admitted, stepping inside. The studio was breathtaking, workbenches covered with sketches and precious metals, display cases showcasing intricate pieces that seemed to capture light and hold it prisoner. "How long have you known?" 3 months. Camilla poured 2 glasses of wine from an open bottle of Bordeaux. "I hired a private investigator when Victor started coming home smelling like someone else's perfume. The investigator sent me photos 2 weeks ago. Your wife is quite beautiful." The compliment felt like a knife between his ribs. "Was," Damien corrected bitterly. "She was beautiful. Now I can't look at her without seeing." He trailed off, accepting the wine glass. "Without seeing the lie," Camilla finished softly. She gestured to a leather sofa near the windows. "Sit. Let's talk about what we're going to do about our unfaithful spouses." They sat close enough that their knees almost touched, and Camilla pulled out a leather notebook. Victor's weakness is his reputation. He's built his empire on being trustworthy, the man with golden integrity. If whispers start circulating about shady business deals, questionable partnerships, his investors get nervous. "Do you have proof of shady deals?" Damien asked, leaning forward with interest despite himself. Camilla's smile was feline. "I've been married to him for 6 years. I know where all the bodies are buried, metaphorically speaking. Offshore accounts, contractors paid under the table, building inspectors who received generous consulting fees. Nothing illegal enough to prosecute, but damaging enough to make people question his character." "And Natasha?" Damien heard himself ask. "Your wife depends on social standing, doesn't she? Her boutique, her charity board positions, her carefully curated image." Camilla tapped her pen against her lips. What if certain people learned that she's been embezzling from the charity she chairs? Small amounts, easily overlooked, but enough to ruin her reputation. Damien frowned. Has she been embezzling? Does it matter? Camilla countered. Plant enough doubt, whisper to the right people, and the investigation alone will destroy her credibility. Even if she's cleared, the stain remains. Something about the calculating coldness in Camilla's voice gave Damien pause. "This isn't just about revenge for you, is it? This is personal in a different way." Camilla's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing raw hurt underneath. "Victor didn't just cheat on me. He made me feel invisible. Like I was a beautiful accessory to be displayed at his parties, but not a real person with thoughts and feelings and worth." Her voice cracked slightly. "Your wife did the same to you, didn't she? Made you feel insufficient somehow." Damien's throat tightened. "She said I was married to my work. That I loved my restaurant more than I loved her. Maybe she was right." "No." Camilla's hand found his, her fingers cool and soft. "People who truly love you don't punish you by betraying you. They talk. They work through things." She squeezed his hand. "We deserved better than this." The touch sent electricity up Damien's arm. He looked at their joined hands, then up at Camilla's face. In the soft lighting of the studio, she looked both fierce and fragile, and he felt an overwhelming urge to protect this woman who was essentially a stranger. "So we do this together," he said quietly. "Make them regret what they've done." "Together," Camilla agreed, but she didn't let go of his hand. They spent the next 2 hours plotting, their heads bent close together over her notebook. Camilla would start by anonymously sending documents about Victor's questionable business practices to a journalist she knew at the city's largest newspaper. Damien would casually mention to mutual friends that Natasha had been acting strangely about her charity finances, planting seeds of doubt. But somewhere between the second and third glass of wine, the conversation shifted. They talked about how they'd met their spouses, the early days when everything seemed perfect. Camilla described her wedding day with a wistfulness that broke Damien's heart. He told her about the night he proposed to Natasha, cooking an elaborate 7-course meal in his tiny apartment. "You're a romantic," Camilla observed, studying him with those penetrating grey eyes. "I was," Damien corrected. "I'm not sure what I am now." Camilla stood and walked to the window, silhouetted against the city lights. "I used to believe in love like that. Grand gestures. Forever promises. Now I think maybe love is just a beautiful illusion we create to avoid loneliness." Damien joined her at the window, standing close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her body. "I don't want to believe that. I can't believe that, or what's the point of any of this?" She turned to face him, and the space between them felt charged with something dangerous and undeniable. "Maybe the point is that we survive. That we make them hurt the way they hurt us. That we prove we're strong enough to move forward." "Is that enough for you?" Damien asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Camilla's eyes searched his face, and for a heartbeat, he thought she might kiss him. Instead, she stepped back, creating distance. "It has to be. We barely know each other, Damien. We're bound by betrayal and anger, not anything real." But as she said it, they both knew it was a lie. Something real was already forming between them, something neither of them had the courage to name yet. Damien left an hour later with a plan in place and Camilla's phone number in his pocket. As he drove home through the quiet streets, he realized he was thinking less about revenge and more about when he'd see her again. The seeds of their conspiracy had been planted. But so had something else, something that would prove far more powerful than vengeance. Forbidden desires. 3 weeks passed in a blur of secret meetings and carefully orchestrated moves. The journalist published a damning exposé questioning Victor's business ethics, and whispers about Natasha's charity work began circulating through their social circle. But Damien found himself caring less about revenge with each passing day and more about the woman who had become his unexpected confidant. They met at Camilla's studio every few days, ostensibly to coordinate their next steps. In reality, these meetings had transformed into something else entirely. Damien would bring ingredients and cook elaborate meals in her small kitchen while Camilla sketched new designs, and they'd talk for hours about everything except their spouses. Camilla told him about growing up with an artist mother who'd taught her that beauty could be found in broken things. Damien shared stories about learning to cook from his grandmother, how food had always been his love language. They discovered shared passions for old jazz records and terrible action movies. She made him laugh in ways he'd forgotten he could. He made her feel seen in ways Victor never had. One Friday evening, Damien arrived at the studio to find Camilla standing at her workbench, tears streaming down her face. She'd just finished a necklace commissioned by a bride-to-be, and something about the hopeful joy in the design had broken something inside her. "I used to believe in that," she whispered when Damien pulled her into his arms. "The white dress, the forever promises. When did I become so cynical?" "You're not cynical," Damien murmured into her hair, breathing in her familiar perfume. "You're hurt. There's a difference." Camilla pulled back just enough to look up at him, her grey eyes luminous with unshed tears. "How are you so kind after everything that's happened to you?" "I'm not that kind," he admitted. "When I'm alone, I'm angry and bitter and wondering what I did wrong. But when I'm with you—" He trailed off, realizing what he was about to confess. "When you're with me, what?" Camilla prompted, her voice barely audible. "When I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to want something beautiful again." The air between them shifted, charged with electricity and possibility. Camilla's hand came up to rest against his chest, feeling his heartbeat thunder beneath her palm. "Damien, we shouldn't." "I know," he interrupted, but he didn't move away. Neither did she. "This is just grief," Camilla tried again, but her fingers were curling into his shirt. "We're both vulnerable and hurting, Anne. And I haven't stopped thinking about you for 3 weeks, Damien finished, his voice rough with honesty. "Tell me you don't feel this too, and I'll leave right now. Tell me this is just about revenge." Camilla's breath hitched. For a long moment, she just stared at him, and Damien saw the war playing out behind her eyes. Logic versus desire, fear versus hope. Then she rose on her toes and kissed him. It was gentle at first, tentative, as if they were both afraid this fragile thing between them might shatter. But then Camilla made a soft sound in the back of her throat, and Damien's control snapped. He deepened the kiss, one hand tangling in her hair while the other pulled her flush against him. They stumbled backward until Camilla's back hit the workbench, sketches and tools scattering. She hopped up onto the surface, wrapping her legs around his waist, and they kissed like drowning people gasping for air. It was desperate and hungry and tinged with the salt of her earlier tears. "Your place or mine?" Camilla gasped when they finally broke apart, both breathing hard. "Mine's closer," Damien managed, already pulling out his phone to call a car. 20 minutes later, they tumbled through the door of Damien's apartment, a converted loft above his restaurant with industrial beams and an open kitchen. They barely made it past the entryway before they were kissing again, shedding clothes in a trail toward his bedroom. When they finally fell into his bed, the frenzy gave way to something slower, more tender. Damien mapped every inch of Camilla's body with reverent touches, discovering the constellation of freckles on her shoulder, the scar on her hip from a childhood accident. She traced the burn marks on his forearms from years in professional kitchens, kissed the worry lines on his forehead. "I'm terrified," Camilla whispered as he hovered above her, their bodies finally joining. "I'm terrified this is real." "So am I," Damien admitted, pressing his forehead to hers. But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe and alone. They made love with an intensity that transcended physical pleasure. It was communion, confession, and absolution all at once. Every touch seemed to say, I see you. I see your wounds and your scars and the beautiful, broken parts you try to hide, and I want you anyway. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the dim light filtering through the blinds, Camilla's head on Damien's chest, his fingers trailing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. What are we doing? Camilla asked softly. This started as revenge. How did it become this? Damien pressed a kiss to her hair. Maybe revenge was just the excuse we needed to find each other. Maybe we were both so lost in our broken marriages that we needed something dramatic to wake us up. Victor and Natasha are going to lose their minds when they find out about us, Camilla mused, though she didn't sound particularly concerned. Let them, Damien said with surprising vehemence. They made their choices. Now we're making ours. Camilla propped herself up on one elbow, studying his face in the darkness. I'm falling for you, she confessed, her voice trembling slightly. I didn't plan for this. I didn't want to feel anything ever again. But I'm falling for you anyway, and it's terrifying. Damien cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing over her cheekbones. Then fall. I'll catch you. I promise I'll catch you. They kissed again, slower this time, sealing a promise that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with healing. As they drifted off to sleep in each other's arms, the plots and schemes that had brought them together faded into insignificance. What remained was something neither of them had expected to find again: hope. The unraveling. The charity gala at the Grandview Hotel was the social event of the season, and Damien had almost forgotten he'd purchased tickets months ago. He stood at the bar in his tailored tuxedo, watching Natasha work the room in a glittering silver gown, playing the role of devoted wife to perfection. 3 tables away, Victor Castellano held court with potential investors, his arm possessively around Natasha's waist whenever she returned to his side. Damien felt nothing. No jealousy, no rage, just a strange detachment, as if he were watching strangers perform in a play he no longer had any interest in. Quite the performance, isn't it? Camilla's voice sent warmth cascading through his chest. She appeared beside him in a stunning emerald gown that made her grey eyes shimmer like storm clouds. Her presence here was deliberate. They decided together that it was time to stop hiding. Academy Award worthy, Damien agreed, turning to face her fully. Just looking at her made him smile. You're breathtaking. As are you. Camilla accepted a champagne flute from a passing waiter, her fingers brushing against his. Are you ready for this? With you? I'm ready for anything. They'd spent the last month building something real between them. Lazy Sunday mornings in bed, late-night conversations about dreams and fears, quiet dinners where they learned each other's favorite foods and childhood memories. Damien had officially filed for divorce 2 weeks ago. Camilla had done the same 3 days later. They weren't sneaking around anymore, they were simply together, publicly and unapologetically. But neither Victor nor Natasha knew yet. That was about to change. Damien took Camilla's hand, lacing their fingers together, and led her onto the dance floor just as a slow jazz number began. She melted into his arms as naturally as breathing, her head resting against his shoulder as they swayed to the music. I love you, he whispered into her hair, the words he'd been holding back for weeks finally breaking free. I know it's fast and probably crazy, but I love you. Camilla pulled back just enough to meet his eyes, her own shimmering with emotion. It's not crazy. Or maybe it is, and I don't care anymore. I love you too, Damien. So much it scares me. They kissed, right there in the middle of the dance floor, soft and sweet and utterly unconcerned with who might be watching. Which was, of course, everyone. The music seemed to stutter. Conversations died. And then, what the hell is this? Victor's voice cut through the silence like broken glass. He stood at the edge of the dance floor, his face purple with rage. Natasha was beside him, her expression cycling through shock, hurt, and fury in rapid succession. Damien and Camilla separated slowly, turning to face their former spouses with a calm that came from knowing they had nothing left to lose. Hello, Victor, Camilla said coolly. Natasha. Lovely to see you both. You're sleeping with my wife's lover. Natasha hissed at Damien, her carefully constructed facade cracking. How could you sink so low? The irony was so rich that Damien almost laughed. How could I? That's an interesting question coming from you. Victor stormed forward, his hand reaching for Camilla's arm, but Damien stepped between them. Don't touch her. This is your revenge, isn't it? Victor snarled, though he didn't try to push past Damien. You two conspired to destroy us because you couldn't handle the fact that we found something real together. Something real. Camilla's laugh was bitter and beautiful. You mean an affair built on lies and betrayal? That's not real, Victor. That's just two selfish people taking what they wanted without caring who they hurt. We fell in love, Natasha insisted, her voice shaking. You can't understand that because you're both too broken to. We understand perfectly, Damien interrupted quietly. We understand what it's like to be made invisible in our own marriages. To be taken for granted and discarded like we never mattered. He glanced at Camilla, finding strength in her steady gaze. But we also understand what real love looks like now. And it's nothing like what you two have. The crowd had gathered closer, phones discreetly raised to capture every moment. Victor seemed to notice for the first time that they had an audience, and his expression shifted from rage to calculation. His reputation was already damaged from the exposé. This public scene would only make things worse. This isn't over, Victor threatened, but his voice lacked conviction. Actually, it is, Camilla said firmly. My lawyers will be in touch about finalizing the divorce. I want nothing from you except my freedom. She turned to Natasha. He's all yours now. I hope he makes you as miserable as he made me. With that, Camilla took Damien's hand and they walked away, heads held high, leaving their former spouses standing in a pool of camera flashes and whispered gossip. They didn't stop walking until they reached Damien's car in the parking garage. Only then did Camilla's composure crack, her hands shaking as she tried to fasten her seatbelt. Hey, Damien said softly, covering her hands with his. We did it. It's over. I know, Camilla whispered. I spent so long being afraid of this moment, and now that it's happened, I feel. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. I feel free. Damien pulled her into his arms, holding her while she cried, not tears of sadness, but of release. All the pain and anger and betrayal that had bound them to Victor and Natasha dissolved in that moment, leaving only the truth they discovered together, that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads you exactly where you need to be. Take me home, Camilla said when her tears finally subsided. Our home. Damien had given up his apartment above the restaurant and moved into Camilla's studio loft 2 weeks ago. It was their space now, filled with the scent of her perfume and his cooking, her sketches scattered among his cookbooks. Our home, he agreed, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Always. As they drove through the city streets, leaving the wreckage of their old lives behind, neither of them looked back. There was nothing behind them worth seeing anymore. Everything that mattered was right here, in this car, heading toward a future they'd build together from scratch. New beginnings. 6 months later, the morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the loft, painting everything in shades of gold. Camilla stood at her workbench, putting the finishing touches on a custom engagement ring, a commission from a couple who'd met at one of Damien's pop-up dinners. She smiled as she worked, still amazed at how much her life had transformed. The dividing wall between her studio and the adjacent space had been knocked down, creating room for Rhodes and Larkspur, an intimate restaurant that seated only 20 guests at a time, where Damien created culinary art while Camilla's jewelry pieces adorned the walls like edible and wearable poetry. They'd combined their talents and their dreams, creating something neither could have built alone. The restaurant had a 6-month waiting list. Camilla's jewelry line had been featured in 3 major fashion magazines. But more than professional success, they'd built a life filled with laughter, trust, and the kind of love that came from truly seeing and being seen. Coffee, beautiful. Damien's voice came from behind her, accompanied by the rich aroma of freshly ground beans. Camilla turned to find him barefoot in jeans and a white t-shirt, his hair still rumpled from sleep, holding 2 steaming mugs. Her heart did the same flip it always did when she looked at him, this man who'd stumbled into her life through shared pain and stayed because of shared joy. "You're spoiling me," she said, accepting the mug and rising on her toes to kiss him. "That's the plan," he murmured against her lips. "For the rest of our lives, if you'll let me." They moved to the balcony that overlooked the city, settling into the cushioned chairs they'd picked out together at a flea market. The same city that had witnessed their betrayal and their revenge now watched their happiness with benign indifference. "I heard Victor's company filed for bankruptcy last week," Damien mentioned casually. "And Natasha had to close her boutique." Camilla was quiet for a moment, searching her heart for satisfaction or vindication. She found only mild sympathy. "I hope they figure things out eventually. I hope they find whatever it is they were looking for." "That's very generous of you," Damien observed, studying her face. "It's not generosity," Camilla corrected, setting down her coffee to take his hand. "It's just, I don't have room for anger anymore. My heart is too full of other things." Damien squeezed her fingers, understanding exactly what she meant. They'd started this journey seeking revenge, plotting to make their betrayers suffer. But somewhere along the way, they discovered that the best revenge wasn't destruction. It was building something beautiful from the ruins. It was proving that they were capable of more love, more joy, more life than their former spouses had ever imagined. "I have something for you," Damien said suddenly, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box, and Camilla's breath caught. "Damien." "Before you say anything," he interrupted gently, "I know we said we'd take things slow. I know we've both been burned by marriage before. But every morning I wake up next to you, and every night I fall asleep with you in my arms, I'm more certain that you're my forever." He opened the box to reveal a simple platinum band set with a single perfect diamond, one of Camilla's own designs, one she'd sketched months ago and thought he hadn't noticed. "You kept my sketch," she whispered, tears already blurring her vision. "I keep everything that matters," Damien said softly. "Camilla Devereux, I love you more than I knew it was possible to love another person. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that love doesn't have to hurt, that promises can be kept, that broken people can build something whole together?" Camilla was crying openly now, nodding before she could form words. "Yes," she finally managed. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Damien slipped the ring onto her finger, and they kissed as the city woke up around them, two people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to walk into the light together. Later that evening, they hosted a small celebration at the restaurant with their closest friends, people who'd supported them through the scandal and celebrated their healing. As Damien cooked and Camilla poured wine, they told the story of how they'd met, leaving out the revenge plot and focusing instead on the unexpected gift of finding love when they'd stopped looking for it. "To second chances," their friend Marco toasted, raising his glass. "To new beginnings," someone else added. But Damien and Camilla just looked at each other and smiled, knowing that what they'd found was so much more than either of those things. They'd found redemption. They'd found home. They'd found the courage to trust again, to hope again, to love again without reservation. As the evening wound down and their guests departed, Damien and Camilla stood on their balcony once more, wrapped in each other's arms, watching the city lights flicker like earthbound stars. "Do you ever regret how we started?" Camilla asked softly. "The revenge, the plotting, all of it." Damien considered the question seriously. "I regret the pain that brought us together. But I can't regret finding you. Every choice I've made, good and bad, led me to this moment. Led me to you." "Me too," Camilla whispered, turning in his arms to face him. "Thank you for catching me when I fell." "Always," Damien promised, sealing it with a kiss. And in that moment, under a sky full of stars and a city full of possibilities, two wounded souls who'd set out for revenge found something infinitely better. A love story written in hope, healed wounds, and the beautiful truth that sometimes the best things in life come from the places we least expect. Lessons from this story. True love heals rather than harms, building trust from honesty instead of breaking hearts through betrayal. Revenge may promise satisfaction, but forgiveness and moving forward bring lasting peace and genuine happiness. Sometimes our greatest blessings arrive disguised as our deepest wounds, leading us exactly where we need to be. The most profound connections are forged not in perfection, but in shared vulnerability, choosing each other daily with open hearts.